put it in the Pacific and give it no real land mass for neighbours or anything else. The country we're talking about is, of course, New Zealand. I'm Duncannuva, and today we're going to be talking about one of New Zealand's little-known tanks. Today, we're going to be talking about the Schofield Tank. Now, you might be confused what the Schofield Tank is, and whether it existed. It did. It was a hybrid tank. It used both tracks and wheels. And so I thought, whilst I'm playing the British, that the hybrid tanks that the tanks that the British have would be more than sufficient enough. How great is that person? Who wants banana? Well, guess what? I'm not talking about bananas, I'm talking about a New Zealand tank, so whilst playing British tanks, so there you go, that's New Zealand somehow. I don't know, can't do math, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, can't be bothered. Anyway, as I was saying, I know. Anyway, as I was saying, the Schofield Tank was developed by, as I try to find the friggin' name, E.J. Schofield, who was a dealer in General Motors in Wellington, so the capital of New Zealand. Oh. Don't worry, Jim, there's machine gun fire. The sneaky tank. Super sneaky crumble. Oh, I hit something. You brought me down, Mom. Why is a Cheeto behind me when that thing has a bigger gun than I do?
Enemy forces have captured a zone.
Q.
Most of the strategic zones are captured.
I do not have the gun to attack a KP-1. I bet the KP-1's got more than enough penetration to kill me. Hope no one needed that fence. Anyway. The Schofield Tank was based on the chassis of a Chevrolet 600-weight truck using the suspension of a universal carrier, of which New Zealand had a lot. I'm lost. How are you lost?
Victory is near.
How, man? I'm talking about a New Zealand tank, and you just told me you're lost. How are you lost? Hello, Katusha trucks.
Enemy forces have captured a zone.
Anyway, as I was saying, New Zealand being in the Pacific was very problematic with invasion, especially with the Right, you're playing Fallout New Vegas, I completely forgot. Hello there, Mr. KP-1. Ah! I may be slightly on fire. Nope. At that moment, Duncan realized he could not escape. The Schofield Tank was actually the second tank New Zealand built, the first one being the Bob Sepleton. The Bob Sepleton was not that good. It basically taught New Zealanders how not to build a tank.
Attack the enemy!
Which is sad, I mean. But again, there's not much you can do. With the Schofield Tank basically improving and being better as a tank than the New Zealand Bob Sepleton tank, i.e. being smaller and actually more practical, this tank made it all the way to Britain and was undergoing trials when the British were like, no, we don't need this tank. And yeah, they never used it. It had a 37mm gun, a crew of 3, and a machine gun. But the most interesting thing about this tank is it had the both had the use. Okay, let me restart that. The interesting thing about the Schofield Tank is it was one of the few designed tanks to use to incorporate both tires and, of course, tank treads. Due to having the tread system from a universal carrier, a very small armoured tracked personnel carrier developed by the British, as well as the ability to use the Chevrolet 6 truck
Attention to the map.
to its advantage. unlike the Matilda here, which was a single-track thing, or the Spitfire. Hello BF-109F, I'm a Spitfire.
Attention to the designated
So yeah.
square.
The other interesting thing about the Schofield Tank compared to its other counterpart, the
Another zone captured, we have the advantage.
British tanks, was completely and utterly designed by a person who knew what he was doing.
Destroy the target.
Oh, I got two people watching. Yay, I feel special. Oh well. Hope no one needed that well.
Another zone captured, we have the advantage.
And the other difference between the Schofield Tank and the Simpleton Tank is one was built on the chassis of a tractor, whilst the other was not. The Schofield Tank was built, like I just mentioned earlier, on the chassis of a truck, the Chevrolet 6. The fact that it was actually one of the few New Zealand designs to actually make its way to England, so being reviewed by the Royal Ministry of Defence, I think it would be, actually meant that it was even very lightly considered to be equipped to British armies. And the fact that it was a hybrid both tyre and track system would have put a lot less strain on the suspension, but, well, Britain being Britain said no and rack off. You'll use our tanks, and so we used the British Valentine, and of course the British Matilda here. We even used the Churchill, but... Oh. Well, that shouldn't have happened. Until had more than enough armor to block a round from the KV-5, even with this 5, which was a 76mm gun. Now we've just got the British Churchill. Now, why do I still have high explosive? How dare I? So, I want to talk a bit more about the Schofield. Is that even though the tank's design was short-lived, then the fact that it made it to England and was even considered for British, the British Army, actually meant quite a few things for the New Zealand Army. One, we shouldn't try to build tanks. The other nation that also suffered from this problem was Japan. I will now get into the reason why New Zealand and Japan would have had the most trouble with building tanks. First of all, what are they mostly surrounded by? It's blue. It's not able to support trucks or tanks of any shape and size. What is it called? Chat? What is this strange thing I'm talking about? Oh, we won. Woohoo! Baby, I'm gonna butte Fort Beaufighter. I'll talk about the Beaufighter in another video. But chat? Hello? Anybody there? Or have I been talking to myself this whole time? Where the heck is... Yes, that's on the right side. Do-do-do-do. I came 11th. I did a thing. Although I did have both my tanks knocked down. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention like normal. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to ask you a simple question, okay? What is blue? Unable to support heavy machinery unless you have a specially designed, well, chassis for it. And often contains fish. And no, it's not the Churchill. Had a person say it was the Churchill, and no, it isn't. Another Churchill Mark 1. Wait for chat to answer my question. Or are they not paying attention? Cause it's wet. Give them about another minute or so. Yes, it is blue. You can actually see it if you're paying attention to where my cursor is. There's stuff on this map here. What's this blue stuff called? Come on, people. I know you know what it is, and we drink it occasionally. And it's what's used to make every drink in history. Well, a form of it. Come on, answer the question. Whilst I drive, indeed, one of the worst tanks in history. It's a person of one. Can you even English, bro? It's water. Oh, good. Thank you, Blazehorn, in the chat for pointing out that it was indeed water that New Zealand and Japan had to worry about. Japan had to worry about the Pacific and the Chinese Sea, whilst New Zealand had to worry about the Tasman and the Pacific Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean, like Japan. Or even Japan had to worry about China. And that. The problem that arose from this was building a tank that would be A, able to be transported across large bodies of water, and B, able to be used on coastal regions, because salt water tends to rust your equipment quite badly. Britain also had to worry about this, but Britain had a, Britain was a bit more of a special case. As was, well, technically all countries are a bit of a special case. But the things that New Zealand and Japan had to worry about was they had to be light enough, but they had to be able to do their job. Well, that happened, and that is why this tank is indeed the worst tank in history. The Panzer, as you can see, the Panzer II could easily just kill the 3-inch gun carrier because it had no armor whatsoever. So now I'm going to take out a tank that was actually used in the desert. The Churchill gun carrier never was. Anyway, as I was saying, the Schofield Tank probably didn't weigh more than maybe a ton, or well, I think it actually weighed 3 tons. Whilst the Bob Stapleton tank weighed about 6 tons. Some of the Japanese tanks, such as the Type 95 Chi-Ha and the Chi-He, as well as even the Chi-Nu, only weighed between 10 and 12 tons, depending on what version it was. But then again, you have to worry about one other thing, and that is something tanks fire, and that is a projectile that is launched from the cannon of the tank. My tank commander just shouted it. Is ammunition, as well as fuel. And of course, provisions and other yada yada yada. The list goes on and on and on. Because you have to worry about all of these while making a tank, New Zealand and Japan rather didn't focus heavily into making tanks. In fact, New Zealand didn't really focus much into making of anything. We didn't make planes, we didn't make ships, we didn't make boats. I think we actually made a few boats. Or ships, I don't remember. I have to read it again. So the fact that New Zealand was able to produce 2 prototypes for 2 different tanks that could have been used is really quite good. And one of them is well known, sort of. That's the Bob Stapleton tank. And unfortunately not many people know about the Schofield tank, which is kind of a downside because it was a much better tank. Had the Schofield tank entered production with the British Army, I probably would have been given a title. The Churchill was called the A-22, and this thing was called the A-13. And there is a tank in the game that is from down under. The Thunderbolt, the AC-4 Thunderbolt, which is an Australian-built tank. But that never saw production, never saw war either. New Zealand's tanks, or 2 of them, would never see active service, or they didn't even enter mass production, which sucks. I mean, when you think about it, all tanks deserve to be known about. Has he noticed me? But there's not much I can say because, like I said, war is won by the victors, and what the victors say goes. Newton. Oh. rats.
Soldier captured.
You will never be able to penetrate me. Sir, go away. You will never be able to penetrate me. He will, because he's got the gun for it. Oh, he has made a mistake.
It serves him right.
Hello, Sherman. The gaming shooter. Saw. I'm out. I'm out tank. What the heck? Well, there goes him. There's the Sherman. 228. Oh, there goes me. 3-inch gun carry. I mean, a 3-inch gun will kill you. So I'm out tank. God. Alright.
Our victory is near.
There's people hunted up there. I'll talk a bit about British tanks in general, because a lot of them are very, very weird. For instance, the Churchill Mark 1 here had both armor piercing, had a 4-inch howitzer, no 75mm howitzer, and a 2-pounder gun. Later versions of the Churchill would drop this entirely, but would eventually be equipped with a 57 and later 76mm gun, or a 16-pounder. There was one tank that was well received as quite weird, and that was the British, something of the Gentleman, and that was the TOG 2. It's in World of Tanks as a Tier 6 premium. And Gaijin, however, I don't ever think we'll see it. Now, the interesting thing about the Schofield Tank is if it had entered British service, it wouldn't actually be called an infantry tank, it would have been called a cavalry tank. Like the Crusader Mark II, many of the other tanks, it would have received a number and letter designation, depending on what it would be. And it would have been called a cavalry tank. There we go. The X7 was a much better fighter than the P400 could ever want to be. And that's just because the Russians were fighting wars with the Japanese, and so they got to do quite a bit with them. Now, the Churchill tank wasn't actually a heavy tank. It was actually classified under the British doctrine, along with the French doctrine, at the beginning of the Second World War as a infantry tank. This tank would have moved slow enough for infantry to walk with it. Eventually they built a version of this thing with a flamethrower. So, you know, several tons of steel and a flamethrower, and it was called the Churchill Crocodile. It actually did the job, from what I read. You can actually see one in the Bovington Tank Museum in England. Anyway, not much wasting ammo. So yeah. The purpose of, so for people who just joined, I'm talking about one of the lesser known New Zealand tanks, although I've got a question for you. Did you think New Zealand even built tanks? Go on, answer honestly. Did you ever think New Zealand would ever build a tank of any description? Flying tanks. Someone sent me in the rear. Or is it a... Was that? By the looks of it, it was a bomb. Detonated, so I'm perfectly fine. Let's continue on. Now, as War Thunder hasn't added in any of the British tanks, it is quite... Oh, no. Do I need to answer? Yes. Yes, you do need to answer, and thank you for answering. I mean, you have listened to me blabber on about tanks from New Zealand. Forever. Haha! My armor is impenetrable to your little gun. Right, there you are. I'm gonna give pew to you. Unfortunately, if the Schofield Tank and the Cybertron Tank had entered production and was used, they would have been easily killed and many faults would have been found. The Cybertron tank, which is a much larger tank, yeah, it had a bit of a problem. If you dared to go up a hill, well, you were a bit screwed. Oop, howitzer doesn't have a clear view. But I think one of them, I get them. The only tanks you really can make from the New Zealand Army is if you got a model of the Valentine or the Sherman or even the Walker Bulldog. Or same with the Centurion tanks. New Zealand didn't really dabble with tanks for that much. I mean, we didn't need to. Our biggest, can't even speak. Our biggest thing, you know, stopping people from invading us, is all the water around us. And I got killed by the M4A1, which I do believe doesn't have. Oh no, he killed artillery. I got already. He's like, haha, I still killed you. Yeah, but you had to use artillery to kill me. So just to show how pathetic your gun wasn't. I mean, if you saw it, he was going ptwing, ptwing, ptwing. I do love the British tanks. And I saw the most accurate description of it, which I'll tell you. Has lots of armor, and at a small as it's a British tank. And to be said, a lot of the early war British tanks and German tanks in general. So all of these tanks up here, the Valentine, the Archer, and I'll tell you something interesting about the Archer in a bit, the Churchill, and the Cromwell, all were pretty crappy tanks. Even the American brought Achilles, which is these two here, and the Sherman, against stuff like the Tiger tanks. So, and we are talking 1942 when the Tiger tank did appear, the Tiger 1. I'm not talking about the Tiger 2. We're talking about these tanks here. Which tree of mine does have who I think it is? Yes, you. We're talking about this tank here, the Tiger H1. When it first appeared in 1942 in the Battle of Tunisia, its gun, the German KWK 36-88mm gun, went straight through Churchill's, Valentine's, Sherman's, M3s, both the M3 Lee, and the M3 Stuart, later M5 Stuart, and the Crusader tanks. When one of these was knocked out, the Tiger 131, which is the only working Tiger in the world, the British Army used it to build better versions. Wrong thing. So, we'll just pull up here. So for the British, after they captured the Tiger after 1942, Churchill's Mark 7, the Comet, the Sherman Firefly, and of course, a lot of these post-war tanks. These tanks kept getting bigger and better. To which I do have to ask a question: Do you think a Tiger 2 could survive against something like the Centurion Mark 3? And this thing, the Centurion Mark 3, was, by the way, the last New Zealand main battle tank. So, woohoo! Anyway, as I was saying, I get sidetracked easily. If we're going to talk about New Zealand tanks, we've got to talk about American tanks, we've got to talk about British tanks. I will be driving American tanks in a moment. But I want to talk about how the British and the American and even the German armor after 1942 got better and worse, same with the Soviets. So we're going to talk about the African front and we're going to talk about the Eastern front, two of the biggest fronts in the Western front during the Second World War. The African front was the first use of Matilda tanks and Churchill tanks, Mark 1, Mark 2, and yada yada yada, on both the French and the Free French forces and the British Commonwealth forces. This included New Zealand, Australia, Canada, I was going to say Scotland. No, Scotland was part of England at the time. India and South Africa. And they all had tanks, regardless of that, British, German, the Shermans, and yada yada yada. I'm not going to ask you a question and say, would the Schofield and the Cybertron tank made of any bit of difference? They would not have made any difference whatsoever. In 1942, when the Tiger first appeared, British tanks at the time, 2-pounders, 6-pounders, 75s, were short-barreled 75 guns, and what's the other gun that was there? 57mm guns could not and would not penetrate British German armour at the time. They'd go through a Panzer IV. They'd go through a Panzer V. Not Vines, because that's the Panzer. Panzer IVs and IIIs. Even the Crusader was having a hard time trying to penetrate that. When the Crusader Mark III came out, this bad boy up here, which I actually now just unlocked, with its 6-pounder gun, a 57mm gun, appeared, it was able to get through Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs. But the moment the Tigers and the Panthers began to appear, and even the Panzer F2s and later versions of that appeared, all these guns were now inadequate. So the British and not the French, but the German, well, the British, the Soviet, and the American forces had to find a gun that could penetrate him. After the capture of Tiger 131 in the Battle of Tunisia, it would then give the British and the American forces the best news. The Churchill Mark VII here has a 16-pounder gun, or a 75mm gun if you are not British or using the correct math. I don't know. Depends on which way you want to say the correct math. It was also the last version of the tank. But the other thing came out of it was the ever-reliable, if you want to say so, the Sherman chassis. And that led to the British Sherman Firefly. And the M4 A3 76. The American 76mm armed Shermans. The Sherman Firefly had a 17-pounder gun, as you can see on the screen here. But because it was able to have a bigger gun, it could stay at a much farther distance. However, the distance between a Sherman and a Tiger I in the Battle of 1943 was not that great. The Sherman still had to get within 1,750 feet, no, not feet, meters, of a Tiger to be able to penetrate the 100mm of frontal armor. After that got increased, the Sherman Firefly could still penetrate it reliably. The Soviets, however, decided to go bigger than the British and the Americans. Eventually developing from the KV project, the Kurishlev tanks, they eventually built the KV-85, later renamed to the IS-85, later IS-1, which had an 85mm gun, and then equipped this 85mm gun on the T-34 and the Su-85. They also took the 125mm howitzer, lengthened the barrel, and equipped it on the remaining KV chassis, and turned it to the Su and ISU-152s, tank destroyers. Eventually, even increasing the size of that gun, the 85 to a 120 to later 122mm gun, the Soviets basically said, if we increase the gun, the better. Eventually, the T-34-85 led into the T-44 with I think it had 100, which also had an 85mm gun. Later, a 100mm gun. And of course, the ISU-152 led into the IS-122, which was equipped with the same gun as the IS-2 at the time. And then later it was traded out for the more favourable, much more, what was still in use, along with the ISU-152 or the ISU-100, later ISU-122. The Americans, however, on the other hand, went a bit more differently. Not spending vast amounts of money in their heavy tanks with, wasting money in the heavy tank program, so they thought. Yet there's one there, the M6, which was actually known as the T1. They looked at enforcing and rebuilding the M4s. The M4A1 and M4A3, E2, and 76 were equipped with bigger guns and more armor. However, their biggest benefit came from the M18, and of course, the M36, the Jacks, the Hellcat, and the Wolf No, not the wolf. And the not the Wolverines. There we go. Trying to think of it. It's like Wolverine. And it's also what? With their bigger guns. And eventually, which led on to the creation of the heavy tank number 1995. Again, this tank was developed for offensive in Germany, but never saw service because it was too late. American tanks even used the M20. What was it? Not the M26 Pershing, a very good medium tank with a 90mm gun, which could reliably penetrate through the Tiger's armor. And eventually even looked at upgrading that to the T-29 and the T-34 and the T-30, which is not present in the game, unfortunately. And we'll go over to the T-29 as I do have that. But that's 105 and later 120mm guns. American armor was a bit of a different story to that of the British and the Germans and the Soviets. Is that it was very, 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 rush. The American army system had a very different thing. They didn't have a gun that they needed now, and didn't develop one until many, many minutes later, and by the time they had a gun that could penetrate the Tiger, Germany was rolling out this and this, along with this thing, the Panther and the Tiger IIs. But things could have gotten worse. Had Germany finished testing the Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus, Germany's super heavy tank, there would have been nothing in the Soviet, there would have been nothing in the British, and there would have been nothing, pardon me, that the Americans could have done against this thing. This thing, even if you took out a track, had a 128mm gun and a 75mm coaxial gun cannon, along with the machine guns. And according to some reports, even had a flamethrower. If this tank had entered mass production, I don't care how many IS-2s you've got, how many M26 Pershings, how many Sherman Fireflies, there would have been nothing to have stopped the Maus. Except there were quite a few things. Soft terrain, bridges, the fact that it was a giant freaking 2-story building. Although, you could have hit it as a 2-story building. But, the reason they never entered the thing is Germany lost the war. Oh well, not much you can do. And now with that stated, back onto New Zealand tanks. New Zealand tanks, along with Japanese tanks, were too few. We built 2 prototypes, and the two prototypes were both ridiculed as useless. The Bob Stapleton tank and the E.J. Schofield tanks never got past the prototype stage and were never ever used. 2 prototypes of the Stapleton tank were used, both were scrapped, as was the Schofield tank. Oh well. Not much you can do when history hates your tanks. Rip New Zealand armor. No well. And now for something completely different. Yeah, that was weird. So how goes your Fallout 4, Anthony? Oh wait, Fallout New Vegas, sorry. Babthari, please forgive me. Please. Now to embrace a Russian voice. It's time to embrace a Russian bias. We need to try Glorious Kibito. Cue Soviet National Anthem. I'm not singing it. Ow. Although, I do have a question for you guys. Would you guys like to see me do a video on impractical tanks? Where I go through War Thunder, and I talk about tanks that were impractical, that were slow and... okay. Wait, is that no to my video on impractical tanks, or is it to the question I asked before, how goes your Fallout 4? Or is that to my video? Because if it's to my video, I'm still going to do it regardless. You can't stop me! Anyway, I'd love to know what... Oh. Or was it to the fact that I asked somebody to play the Soviet National Anthem? I'm pretty sure it's the Soviet national anthem. But you see, Comrade, what is that IS-1 doing? He's like, I must embrace communism. Drive through a wall. Glitch through a wall. Hello, time. We are fighting with fascist dogs. No, they destroyed strong wooden soldier. I'm not gonna forgive you. Aww. What did I do now? Or what did I do? What have I done now? Yeah, what have I done now? Hello, glorious IS-1. Oh, drat, they're capturing A. I hope Anthony doesn't find out. We are capturing B, so rush B, comrades, suke blade. I hear pews.
The enemy controls
In real life, you couldn't fire the KV-2 on any type of angle. Because if you did, it would just destroy itself. Because the recoil of the Scud would have just pushed it over. It would have been like,
the enemy has most of the strategic zones.
You said I'm sorry, please forgive. Oh, okay. Shush you. Anyway, I do have a question. Like, oh yeah, just a bit of a heads up. I have uploaded another video today. What? Duncannuva did 2 videos in one day? I wonder. Can I make the person who comes around that? Oh, embrace communism. I'm at that building, embrace communism. Oh, enemy KV-2 killed me. See, this is why you don't wait for the sound of the gun to fire. It was guarded by the head of Stalin. Stalin punished me. I'm sorry, Papa Stalin, please forgive me. Never. It's fair enough. You know. Yes, be afraid, Anthony, I uploaded a second video today. But that's not all. It includes AFMAO in it. Just waiting for him to say rage quits. Yeah, no, I recently uploaded an MMD video. So yeah. We are in a milk truck, yeah. Oops. Duh. I wonder if I got in that thing. Actually, it's a dumb idea. That should protect me from quite a bit when you think about it. We're going on a trip to a place called Auschwitz, zooming through the through the countryside, little Jew steins. They'll never be able to get me in this concrete place. I say, pretty sure that they would be able to get me through that. Stares at you with surprise. Yeah, I know. I mean, I had a bit of a problem with it earlier. It was apparently copyright claim, but then again, I was like, so? You know, it's music. People need to enjoy the music, even if Michael Jackson has passed. Shut up, cat. The cat is meowing in the background, so that's fan-dabby-dozy. The fact that I uploaded this video, is he coming at me? Looks like he isn't. Oh, there's your 9/10 though. See if I can get him. Wait for him to get closer. I'm here, you little sputnik. Yeah, well, I hit him. And I killed him. Go kill assist. T-44 killed him. Yay, Papa killed T-44. T-44. I'm not saying T-30. I'm saying T-44. Yeah. No. You can actually see the hand of him. That hand is like... You'd actually get a workout spinning this thing around. Whee. I call this the Soviet milk truck. But you know... okay, so I watched Guess Who's Back, and that is a film about Hitler waking up in Berlin in 2014. Book says 2011. Anyway, as this is happening, it made me realize just how biased America is towards Hitler, when, in hindsight, America when they entered the war in Europe, had nothing to do with Hitler. I killed him. Failed to kill me. Glorious bunker saved me! Yeah. Flat as a fire. Snack. Cause I did some research on the car they used in the film. It was a Volkswagen, tri-way axle Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz. Of which 57 were built. However, 3 were sold via an American car collector. I killed him. I lost a wing. How am I flying like this? Oh, now I'm gonna hit. Oh, and there goes my plane. What? That plane? The fucking wolf. And the only way this collector could sell them was if he could prove that they were no way, shape or form connected to Hitler. What's a car gonna do? Start the Fourth Reich? Oh, I'm gone. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how stupid America was. Or is. I mean, you know, with the, oh. Go away, bully. I got an adamant in a open-top vehicle. M41A1. Fuck you. Stupid prick. I dislike the M41 so much in this game, the M4, because it's literally one of those tanks that you have to be careful of, because it's got a 90mm gun. But because it's got a gun that can easily penetrate you, and if you're in a Tiger tank, you will know about it. Ostwind, and go this way and deal with the rebels. But it is only a light tank. Excuse me. No, we lost this match. You're lucky you lost this match, comrade. I will get you next time. But anyway, beyond that. I mean, what did Hitler do to the US? Nothing. I mean, the US entered the war after 1941. After Pearl Harbor was attacked. Oh, I unlocked a thing. Oh my gosh, what did I unlock? To the west. Yeah, that would have been mostly sprawled upon some Soviet tanks. I'm gonna get an adjustment of fire next. So, yeah. Oh, look, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, as I was saying, you know, and when you read about what the US have done, like, regarding Hitler and stuff like that, you kind of sit there going, really? Really? They've done this, where, you know, in hindsight, they never had anything to do with it. But then again, I mean, this is the United States, they think they're entitled to every fucking thing. I mean, they've got a military base in every goddamn country in the world. You know, they think they have the right to every country. Ugh. Wait, why am I might as well fly this bomber once. I'm gonna fly the French bomber once, and I'm a bit skeptical on the French tree, actually, to be honest. I've got a good reason why I'm a bit skeptical on the French tree. Because it's a lot of what ifs, and a lot of there's a lot of what ifs in outside countries. I mean, this thing here, the A35B, I hate it. Because I was flying against it in my Blumenvoss, I think. It was either my Blumenvoss or something else, I can't remember, one of the two. I got one hit from 3 kilometers, and I was like, well, that just made my day. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. So, yeah. But I mean, literally all the United States had to worry about was the war in the Pacific. Because if Japan had taken out Pearl Harbor like the way they wanted to, or if they wanted to take out and took out New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, British Malaysia, so on, then there would have been nothing left for the Japanese to do, even Tonga and Fiji and Samoa. For when the Japanese turned their war against Japan, against the United States of America and Canada. They would have definitely taken Hawaii. That would have given them a massive strike base. Japanese bombers could easily reach the American mainland. I mean, it took the Americans capturing Iwo Jima, or was it Okinawa? One of the two. No, it was Okinawa. To be able to put their B-29s within bombing range of Japan. Whilst the Japanese G4Ms, which were built in 1940s, could easily reach Pearl Harbor. From, I think, Okinawa or somewhere like that. Even the flying boats they had. Now, I've got some disappointing news with the French tree. A lot of their planes don't have white flags, so I can't surrender. And another sad thing is if I go in reverse, I get shot. These planes are horrible. But this is the cockpit of this plane. Look how cluttered it is. Not this thing. Whatever that thing is. And they got steering wheels. Hui. We have state-of-the-art steering wheels, while the stupid British have nothing. That's very weird because I went German there. Hui. I mean, I flew them. I mean, it was like the Italians. I flew them for a bit, and then with the Italians, though, I quite like the Italian planes and stuff like that. Because, I mean, you get quite a good kick out of them. I mean, even with the, planes down there. But I got a bit of a bad rip with the French. Back when the French planes first hit, I was flying the reserve tier plane, which was the DW371, and I'd been flying in a match where a dude on the enemy team crash landed. He misjudged his altitude. It happens. The douchebag on my team was like, faggot. I was like, well, says the fag. And then I stood up for them as my entire team ripped into me like, how dare you? And stuff like that. And I honestly didn't give a fuck. I mean, how dare they? Oh, there's a Ju-88 on my tail. Like, how dare they insult someone who misjudged their altitude? I mean, I've done it countless times. Some people at level 100 have done it countless times. Looks like an I-16 took out a P-26. Sanju, did he just... He did. Oh. Yeah, I got triple strike. Yeah. Fear me. I'm British. Oh, actually, I'm French. Fear me, for I'm French. Did Sam Gene, though? Looks like Sam Gene may have taken down a friendly. I mean, you periodically get them. I mean, I-16, yeah, no bayonet. Sanja doesn't even. Oh, I'm top of the team. Although if he tries to shoot me down, I will defend myself. This thing kind of looks like a car. Gonna lower my speed down, otherwise I'm gonna rip my wings off, and well, then I'm not a plane, then I'm a brick. Yeah. Alright, I've got a question for you guys in chat. And I need you paying attention. Chat! Hello, chat. I want to ask you a question. Oh, wait for me to respond. Is he trying to come up and kill me? I'd like to see him try. I think this plane has cannons? No, it's 7.5mm machine guns. The other one has cannons.
I beg your pardon.
Bugger. It takes a while, yeah. Which is understandable. I'm not expecting like a straight up response. I mean, I know there'll be a few second delay for me, for you as well, and a few second delay for me. So, yeah. Welcome, other viewer.
Leaving for landing.
So yeah. Well, the question I've got for you is, if you could design a tank, what would be your main priority? Would it be the gun, the armor, or the mobility? What would be your main priority for a tank? I'd like to see your response, because, you know, why not? And let's see if I do a jingles landing. I shouldn't do, I mean. Even though this thing is the frickin' size of Brest of Normandy Beach. Viva la France. Do 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 do. Speed up. Armor. Interesting. I actually have to commend you on your answer. And I can understand why, because, I mean, you're building a tank. You kind of want to protect the people inside. So, you know, having a tank that, you know, has armor, or has decent armor, means you've got a bit of, at the cost of a gun, well, a decent, you then focus on the gun, or the mobility. You can only have one or two, so I would actually have to focus on the armor as well, because how a tank is, when you hear tank, you hear a big armored behemoth. Not, I mean, nowadays we've got main battle tanks which have stuff, have a special compositive armor. But back in World War II, when you heard tank, they were big, they were armored, they had a gun, and they could do things. And then they were divided by three different categories. You had your light tanks, which were fast, no armor, shitty gun. They were fast. Your medium tanks, which normally had your decent gun. Your heavy tanks, which had good gun, but no speed whatsoever. And then, of course, you had your tank destroyers and your self-propelled guns. Because, you know, and a lot of designers nowadays seem to forget that. I mean, let's take the German... We're going to take a German tank. The Panzer 8 Maus. This thing had over 200mm of frontal armor, and a 128 gun, but had no freaking... Ooh, and there goes my landing gear. I've jingles landed. Yeah, the moment I bounce this thing, the moment I'm screwed. Yeah. Yeah. Pews. Pew cannons. Shit. Oh. We made all, yo. Yeah, so no, because, let's take the M1 Abrams, right? That is 70 tons and has a 105mm gun. But it can fire many different rounds. It can fire, I think it's I know it can fire a heat fin stabilized, and then it can fire a armor piercing, and then it can fire another they can fire quite nasty shots.
We need to put more pressure on the enemy.
In World War II, you didn't have to worry about stuff like that. So if today I built a tank, you know, I would focus heavily on armor. It would probably end up being called the McIntyre failure, but it's still a tank. Its job is to protect the crew. That is what a tank is. I mean, even light tanks and medium tanks had to protect the crew somehow, whether that was through survivability or through other things. The one thing we kind of forget with tanks from all over the world, from Germany to Britain to France to America to even Japan, China, and hell, even New Zealand, when you hear that New Zealand actually built tanks, you kind of go, what? You're kidding, right? No, actually I'm not. During the Second World War, Japan was actually experimenting with heavy tanks. It was called the OI Experimental. This tank was going to be a large steel barn, basically. But it was a heavy tank, nonetheless. And it was supposedly, air quotations, used in China, where it would have seen the most use. France had heavy tanks. They actually had the only super heavy tank. the Russians had their tanks, the British had theirs, and the Germans had theirs. But smaller nations such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada had their tanks. I mean, the Canadians built their own version of the M4 Sherman. It's called the M4A5, and it was a much better tank than the M4, but not by much. New Zealand had two. It was the Schofield. Yes, the Schofield, which I'm talking about right now, well, supposedly, as well as the Bob Stapleton. One of these tanks was an utter failure, the other wasn't. You know, Australia had the AC Sentinels, of which one had a very large phallic machine gun. If you want to know what I'm talking about, search up AC-1 Sentinel on Google and tank, and have a look at the machine gun housing on the hull. You will see what I mean if you have a look at it. It's quite humorous. I mean, and it's true Australian fashion. Oh damn! Not surprised. I mean, the French only had 7.5mm rifled machine guns. That doesn't look like he's going to be able to survive much longer. Looks like he's going down quite fast. Oh no. Yeah. I bet you even South America had their tanks, and I know the Chinese built their own copies of German tanks, or not German tanks, of Soviet tanks, which greatly pissed off the Soviets. I'm not kidding, the Chinese built their own copy of the, I think it was the IS-3 or the T-62. And because they had, the Soviets got rather annoyed at them, and it nearly caused World War III. The next big problem is, you know, yada yada yada.
The enemy is winning. We must counterattack.
What is that plane doing? Of course, none of those would hit. I'm quite surprised he hasn't come after me. You know, he's got the gun to do so. I mean, it's not like the Ju-88 wasn't armed. Actually had a forward-mounted... Early models of the Ju-88 had forward-mounted 7.6... Yeah, 7.6mm machine guns. Later models had 13mm. Which, when you think about it... And a lot of allies actually feared the German 13mm. They were dangerous machine guns. Even the Japanese version wasn't nice. But I'm actually gonna let you guys in on a secret. A lot of what America has is because they stole it from Germany. A lot of their planes, missiles, even sending a man to the moon was Nazi Germany tech. Although I do find the funny thing is because Germany was banned from having this certain agreement to make Coca-Cola, they made Fanta. Yeah, that's funny because I said that to a friend ages ago. He was like, "Oh, I love Fanta." "Oh, so you love the Nazis then?" "What? The Nazis made Fanta." "How so?" "Well, during World War II, Germany couldn't get in the material, well, the ingredients required to make Coca-Cola, so they had to get something else in, which was, and thus Fanta was born." And it really narked him because he hated Germany. Well, he hated Nazi Germany. He hated East and West Germany. He hated Germany, full stop, because he hated Germans. He blamed all of the Germans for what they did to the Jews and yada yada yada. But oh well. I do have a thing, chat. Have you guys ever, like, you've got a friend, and you're talking about something, and then that friend says something completely racist, and then you find out that they actually hate this certain thing, and that you are actually friends with some people? I mean, I've got a couple, and the reason I don't say anything is, well, because of one of my shitty qualities is I get quite scared that my friends are going to turn around and smack me in the face, and they're no longer be my friends, if I'm honest with them. I mean, unless it's Anthony, then I let Anthony know that, well, hey bro, you can't exactly say that. Alright, let's see. Will I do a Jingles Landing again? We are going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship, zooming through. Why am I singing Little Einsteins all of a sudden? I mean, it could be worse. Thomas the Tank Engine was rolling along. Aw, my friend's gone. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Welcome back to Thomas the Tank. Not much. I was singing Thomas the Tank Engine.
Our victory is near.
That's about it. So nothing new. Although now that I've mentioned Thomas the Tank Engine, I'm gonna have to take that tank out that I've called the Soviet Thomas the Tank Engine. Shit. Stop, you bitch! You big bastard! Stop! We're gonna go up the runway! No! Stop, plane! Stop! Ha! Yeah! I made it. You proud of me? You proud of me now, Mom? I just pews. Oh, what? What do we fail? Probably, cover the fortifications. Darn it. Rip. I'm gonna finish this match and then I'm probably gonna call it in. Quits for the stream. Call it in. Into the night. Oh, speaking about that, what is one song that you love that you find out other people love? I love the song Wolf by Siams. I recently found out that my brother loves it. Because he came, I was sitting there playing Ark and I was listening to it. And he says, hey Duncan, you know that Wolf song? Yeah. I freaking hate it because it's catchily. I love it because it's catchily annoying. I unplugged my headset, so I was like, "You mean this song, mate? Do you mean this song?" And then played it, and he's like, "Oh my god, why do you do this to me? Why?" So because we live in the same freaking roof, under the roof at the moment. I found that rather amusing. Do 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 do. I've got a flying mish. I don't want. No, not Numa Numa. Wolf. Oh, Numa Numa's not that. Numa Numa's a good song. Although you kind of see Numa Nuna. So what's Nuna? Please, I know you mean to this great thing, but you know it's me. I'm gonna pick you out on it. Here comes the JU-88. How will you deal with our baguettes?
Need backup.
Roger, roger. It's funny, really, is Britain and France during World War One had bigger aviation forces and tank forces than Germany did. Yet in World War Two, they got completely rifle stomped by the Germans. Backhand you. Ugh. So what? Did you just slap the bitch? Did you just slap the man out of me? Been backhanded. I must hand in my pimp. Did you just pimp hand me? It's two French versus the one German. Problem is, this thing is basically a heavy bomber with a pusher-puller engine that was very slow.
Let's keep the pressure on. Victory is close.
Gotta drop my bombs on those cars. Maybe. I need to know, man. Did you or didn't you? Is he coming for me? I will laugh if he crashes. Yes. I knew you did. I knew you never cared. Or maybe you do care, and that's your just weird way of showing it. Very nice. Gunship wars!
Keep it up and victory will be ours.
I completed my mission for my country. Vive la France. Kaplonk. I did my job. La France. Although, I mean, you have to admit, that was a very spectacular way of ending a match. Anyway. Woot! Well, that gives me everything. Nice. Q. That's another plane fully spaded out. Yeah! So modifications. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's video. I enjoyed the conversation, you know, stuff like that. I hope you guys did too. You know, enjoy the witty commentary, witty banter, yada yada yada. Yeah. I am going to be doing, hopefully, if you guys want me to, a video in the near future on, all of the, on weird looking tanks and even aircraft. Let me know, if you want me to do that. I mean, that'd be kind of fun to do. So yeah. Thank you guys. Why is it like saying, hey, you want to research this? I don't have anything more for the, bomber. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Duncannuva saying to you once again, and good night. Wrong button.